right, so this is going to be a basic tutorial. I'm going to bounce back between this presentation and at Grade Center. We'll get some hands-on work. Let's get started on the gradebook. Like I said, the gradebook can be one of the, if you keep it simple, it can be a very easy tool to use, very convenient. Or it can be super complicated because it can be overwhelming. There's so many different ways of approaching it. I'm going to teach you two basic ways to approach the gradebook. And one of the reasons we wanted to do this session is we're finding that more and more students are expecting to have access to their grades at all times. The gradebook in Blackboard is an easy way to basically, whenever you get your grading done, boom, they have the ability to check My Grades either on the navigation of the homepage under My Grades, or if you have a My Grades tab in your class. So if your student decides, hey, I want to check my grades at 3 a.m., guess what? They can do that. Also, you can download the gradebook at the end of the semester and submit it to your department so they have a full spreadsheet of the activity. If there's any question that comes up from a student after the class is closed, the college has easy access to see their activity and see that you did a great job and investigate any issues that come up. It's all centralized. But big thing is right now, students are expecting it. They are expecting to see their grades on a regular basis. And so if you aren't using the gradebook already, welcome. Let me introduce you to the gradebook. Hopefully we'll give you some new tips. If you are using it, hopefully you'll find some new ways of simplifying your life. Because if you're not a mathy person, it does the math for you. So that simplifies it right away. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to show you, the big thing is the full grade center. That's where all the magic happens. And that's under this course management menu that I'll jump into in a minute. In this presentation, I'm going to show you how to use the total points system. And then we can use the total points and weighted total column. When we use the weighted total column, we're going to determine maybe some categories as well. So we'll go over total points first, look at categories and how we can use those categories to use the weighted total column, and also some ways to display our grades. Let me jump into e-learning. So I'm going to go to basically where my students would land in this training course. And the full grade center is under course management, under grade center, full grade center right here. Okay. And this is going to show you all of your students when they last access it. You can also have their A number displayed. I have that hidden. And then all of your shells, when they come up in the Gloucester campus, will automatically have a weighted total and a total column. That's the naked shell. That's just how they come for Gloucester. If you copy course material over from a previous semester, your grade center, if requested, will also copy. So you may want to get rid of these default columns or adjust them. All right, but we'll get to that point. When you prep for your grade center, one of the easiest ways to prep a grade center is to have all the activities already on the playing field. If you go week by week, there are some ways of just keeping things organized, and I will go over that. But if you have to keep on thinking, oh, is this in my grade column? Is this in my grade column? Is this on my grade column? It can get a little confusing. So it may be a good idea just before the semester to make sure that all the graded activities are already there. When you create an activity that is graded, such as a discussion board, you do use the assignment tool or a test, things like that are automatically once you build them, automatically create a column in the grade center. If you have something, if you're in an in-person class or a hybrid class and students hand something to you in person, you can also create a column. So once you grade that, you can enter the material and hand the student back. A lot of teachers are looking to go paperless because this way that submission is always going to be in e-learning. It's going to be in Blackboard. So if once you hand it back, if something got deleted by mistake, guess what? Just go back to that submission and get it. Oh, wait, what did you mean by the feedback on this particular submission? Well, the student has it or they've lost it. You can go back to that submission. So even if you do face-to-face, using the gradebook and having your work submitted through Blackboard is a good idea because it's paperless. All the data, all the information is contained in one place. So it's a good idea to set up those graded activities first. The other thing you want to think about is how you're going to grade things overall. So you might say, all right, here's the assignment. Here's 10 points. Here's 100. But think about how you want to grade things entirely as the class. How many points do you want your class to be worth? What's your score? What's your schema that you're going to use? Those things. And then once you have that idea, you can create your activities, and then you'll go and grade them in needs grading. Let's say we have all our activities, all right? We go to Grade Center under course management. We go to needs grading. Once students submit work, this is where it's going to show up. And then I'm going to click the student's name. So I'm going to click Kyle's attempt. And then I'm going to be able to take a look at Kyle's work and then add points here. Okay, and that's how I would grade it. And once I hit submit, there's my submit button. There we go. Submit. It will be entered into the grade center. Now I use this particular sample for training, so I'm going to leave that in there and I'm going to exit. Okay, so you go through needs grading and it'll go straight to the grade center. If you have an automated test or quiz, like a multiple choice quiz where Blackboard grades it for you, it will automatically go into the gradebook as well. You don't even have to touch it. You can access it, you can review the attempts, but there's one exception to that. If it is late, it'll go in the needs grading queue. You just review it, decide if you want to take points off, and then you can go ahead and it'll go through to the grade center as well. Okay, so first we set up our activities, we get some stuff to grade. And that's kind of the process it, but how do we calculate everything? And that's kind of what we're looking at today. So the first way I'm going to show you is probably the easiest way. It can be a little confusing at first to suddenly start giving out 2s and 3s and 5s, and students are expecting 100s, like, I will admit I'm a person that uses a 100% scale because one student just like cried their eyes out to me like my second year of teaching and saying, I don't understand why I deserve a 2. I'm like, well, it was only worth 2 points. But you can also do total points. Total points is super easy because you're kind of already weighting the value of the assignment by just adding a point. So let's say you have 5 discussion boards and you want your discussion boards to be 10%. Well, 2 points per discussion board, 5 discussion board, that's 10 points. And if you can break your class down so it equals one whole number, 100 is kind of good, but then you start getting to really small numbers that might complicated. But either way, everything's already weighted by a smaller point assessment. Like a test can be 10 points, a discussion board 5, maybe a reflection 2. But the idea is throughout the semester, this total points column will add up all the points, creating a possible points, because you'll have all your activities there. And it'll show the students how much they have out of how many possible points. If you still want to, in the end, for that final grade, display a percentage, you can do that because the display settings in Blackboard allow you to do a letter grade, a score, a percentage, or even just straight numbers. When using total points, you think, okay, I'm adding this up. If they have under what's possible, that's just a lower number. That's what it means by possible points. You have to still put zeros into columns, whether you're using total points or 100% scale, because if there's no data in a grade cell, I'll jump over to the gradebook in a second, it doesn't know to calculate it. So putting a 0 will always show how that missing assignment will impact the final grade, regardless of what format you're using. So if I work with you and I say you're using points are 100%, total points means everything's already weighted by a certain number, by its actual scale, and you're just adding the points up throughout the semester. So let me go over into our gradebook again. Full Grade Center. And I have a couple students here and I have a total column. So let's say, Tile got a 10 points worth. He showed up all the time. We had 10 classes. It was a hybrid, 10 classes. All right. He's got now 10%. Okay. And let's say I'm going to give him, this was a 20-point assignment and then a 5-point assignment. Okay, so what's happening here is everything's being added up. Now ignore this column because that's a weighted total. We'll get to that. This is a total column, so it's adding all of these points up. And once you award certain points, now these are actually set to 100, it would tell you here where it says possible points, how many points the class is worth over how many points the student has earned. And that's going to create their grade. So there's no need to weight it. There's no need to add percentages. There's no need for categories. You're just saying, hey, these are worth all of these numbers, and it's going to add up, and you can divide, and it's going to create your average. Okay. So that's your total points. You're basically just creating your activity columns. You're awarding them specific points based on their value, which is automatically weighting them. And you're adding a column that just adds them up. Okay. If you just use that total column, you don't need a weighted column. You could actually delete the weighted column in your gradebook if you're not using it. The one thing you want to keep is a consistency. And so if there's like 3 or 4 different total columns or weighted columns, it might be a little complicated for them to figure out which one says their grade. So make sure that there's 1, 2 maybe columns on how they can get their grade. Okay. And this green check means external grade. And this is what's being sent out to My Grades on the dashboard. So whichever one you end up using, make sure you put the green check set as external grade. So this way the system knows where to send out that grade data so it can be notified. And also on a side note, this does not talk to Banner. Okay, so at no point do student records get this information. This can always be a work in progress for the student so you can review it, double check things, have conversations, maybe even give the student a second chance or something like that. So that's total points. You assign points to the assignments and a total column adds them up. We're going to move on to weighted total. So most people, when I work with them, don't use the phrase weighted total. I see current grade a lot. I also see overall grade. And overall grade is a pretty good scheme of saying, hey, this is your average. This is your overall grade. So I would say when we're creating a weighted total column, you can rename a column and either use overall grade or current grade. That seems to click with students pretty well. Now, the key with the weighted total is it's based on either individual assignments or categories. So with a weighted total, you can either create individual weights for individual assignments or create categories. So by default, when you use a tool in Blackboard, that's automatically its category. All right. So when we go to manage, and this is going to be one of your favorite sections of the gradebook. Manage is really cool. It does a lot of fun stuff, keeps things organized. We go to categories. All right, and we can see assignments as a category, attendance. If you create something with the discussion board, guess what category goes in? Discussion. But let's say I like to combine my discussion boards and my assignments, things with the assignment tool. I like to combine them. I'm going to call them classwork. I can do that. So I can say create category, create something called classwork. Okay. And then from the full grade center, I can change things into their category and put that in it. Also, when I create a new assignment, I can put it in a certain category. For example, people might create a category called quizzes, and their weekly quizzes may go into that quiz category. But then you might want to, you have a final exam. You don't want that averaged in. It's the final exam. That's the big one. You want to take that out of a category so it stands alone. So when you put the percentages in, it'll work out. So let's go ahead and take a look at how to add something to a category. I'm going to jump back to the full grade center. And I can do change category in 2 places. I can do it at the individual column. So I click the edit dot next to the title and go to edit column information. And here we have the category, okay? And then I'm going to assign it to classwork. So now anything that's considered classwork will be put towards that weighted total, all right? And this is just the prep work before we get to the actual weighted total. This is to prepare us to have all the categories we needed. The other place you can change the category for something is column organization. And column organization is great because it will show every assignment in a list. None of that big long scrolling that the full grade center does. Shows you all the points that it's awarded and what category is it in. So I'm going to click these two and I'm going to change my category to classwork now. So when I add this to my weighted total, all of these will be attributed to the classwork category. If you are building your class as you go along, if you find that you have to add stuff in, categories is a good way where you can still just add a particular item to the category and it'll automatically filter into that overall grade or current grade column, okay? So as long as you remember to add it to the category, it's good. So let's say instead of putting every single test in at 2%, you can just create a test column. And at the end of the semester, you're like, oh no, I gave 5 tests. Instead of remembering to have to put that in, have a test category, have them all averaged together and towards that final overall grade. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. All right, now we have our categories. So let's take a look at this weighted total column. Once again, I'm going to hit edit. I'm going to change the name to overall grade. Okay. Now that's the column name, but also it has a grade center name. You'll see on assignments, you can have a column name and a grade center name. I would be consistent, have them the same thing. I have seen where assignments are named differently and then you change things and then the grade column doesn't match. So try to be as consistent as possible with your naming schemes. And it's going to show the primary score. And here we have where the magic happens. We have some stuff already put in here. I'm going to clear these out so we can start from scratch. But you got the idea of what it's supposed to look like. So here we have at the top columns to select. These are the individual assignments. So here you see my activity 1, activity 2. And here we see our categories. So if you want to put a category in, let's go ahead and put classwork in. We select that here. Use this arrow to move it over to this calculated column. And I'm going to put classwork in at 30%. All right. When you use a category, you have the ability to drop the lowest grade or be really super evil and drop the highest grade. If you have this in your grade scheme or your plan, I would do this at the end of the semester or some point during the semester or something. Never do it first because then automatically it's going to drop the first grade because it's the only one there. But I usually see people reflect on this and maybe do it at the end of the semester based on how things went. All right, so we have categories. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my journal in. I'm going to put that at 20%. So anything that's a journal will be averaged together and will be 20% towards the final grade. All right, so now we can see that we are up to 50%. Now the next thing we might want to do is, let's see. I've got assignment number 1. Let's move that over. Let's say that's an essay. I'm going to put that at 10%. I'm going to move activity. Let's do attendance. All right, let's move attendance over and let's make that at 20% and then click out of the box. Once you enter the number, click outside the box and you can see that your total is going up. Let's see, what else do we have? Sure, let's do surveys. Let's move that on over and that can make up our 20%. So it doesn't really matter what your items are. It's just make sure that they all add up to 100%. And then you can hit submit. If it doesn't add up to 100%, maybe you don't have something in there yet. It'll just say, hey, buddy, it's not 100% yet. All right. And then it'll still go through, but you'll have to remember to calculate it further. So you can do individual assignments or categories. Okay. And just highlight and click them over and add the percentages. Students never see this, but just for transparency, always make sure it matches your syllabus. All right, so let's go ahead and hit submit. So now we have our overall grade and we have some points. And so right now, if everything was weighted as 100 sort of thing, I got to talk to Kyle a little bit. But this way, this is calculating as everything is weighted with those categories. So when you use a total points column, you're just assigning points and adding them up. The total column will show how many possible points the student can achieve at that certain point in time, and then how many points they have achieved, giving that average of possible points versus earned points. The overall grade, or our weighted total, is based on categories or individual assignments. And I would recommend using 100% for each of those assignments, making the math super easy to understand. So basically, you're having all of these activities averaged together, because they're all the same amount, averaged together to create a category that's worth a certain percentage of the final grade. And you can address those percentages in categories that you've defined, or they are already defined based on the tool used in Blackboard, makes it super convenient, or as individual assignments. Like I said, when you do standalone ones, you want to make sure that it's not in any category, because otherwise then, if you don't pull your final exam out of your quizzes, you're going to have that final exam averaged in with the quizzes and put into the weighted total. So it's going to count twice. So just double check those sort of things. Once you have the idea of how you're going to do your total points, can be whatever number you want. Just make sure everything's there. I would say if you use the weighted total column, stick with 100. And the key thing is to be consistent throughout the semester. If you're going to use 100, use all 100. If you're going to use various points, use various points. Don't mix it up. It can be done. Math gets complicated. But this keeps it pretty simple. Like I said, the weighted total is to create a final average. Activities are based on 100% per activity. You can call it current grade or overall grade. So let's talk a little bit about the display. When doing the gradebook, you can display all of your columns, all of your activities, your total column or your weighted column, whichever one you'd like to use. You can use a score, so it's the number, a percentage, number plus a percentage sign. You can even use a letter grade, or you can mark it as incomplete or complete. I don't see a lot of people using that last one, and if they do, it is super low stakes kind of activities. An overall grade, or current grade, or even the total column can have two displays. All right, one is seen by students, and the secondary display will appear in parentheses and is only seen by the faculty. So a lot of times I will see instructors use the score as the primary display and our letter grade as the secondary display. So then when we enter stuff in Banner, guess what? We're not entering numbers. We want to know whether it's an A-. So for that letter schema, grading schemas, check here. If it says fall 2023, it's been updated. If not, you can click the edit dot and then go ahead and update it. So for example, if you do see other rows, I'm gonna have to put that one back. You can add a row. Oh, there we go. Let's see, that's a D. So you would put what the letter equals and the numbers it equal in here. So this is the scale between a 0 and a 93 is an A. Less than, so 92 to 90, A-. So this is where we can see that letter schema. And what I can do is go back to my full grade center. And if I wanted to, I can do the overall grade. All right. Edit column information. Okay. And I can select letter for my primary display or score, or letter for my secondary display. All right, let me go ahead and hit submit. And here we see, here's the score and here's the letter grade. So let's go ahead and show you how to put two displays, and then I'll show you how to add a column just to show the letter grade. Edit. So overall grade, your overall grade columns, current grade columns, that sort of thing, has a primary and a secondary display. You can decide if any of these, you can even have them see the letter grade and you see the score. That's totally fine too. And then what we see is the letter, and what's in parentheses is what we see only. If you wanted to do a single column, an additional column that does show the students, you can do total column. All right. Overall letter grade and primary display letter. Okay. And select columns and categories. And we're only going to select that one. All right. So I'm going to hit submit. And as you notice with Blackboard, everything kind of goes to the bottom or all the way over. What you want to do is column organization. Because I like having my grade columns like right next to their names. I'm going to go to the bottom. Overall letter next to overall grade. Done and done. Okay. So now we see the overall letter grade next to the overall grade. So those are different ways you can display your grades, different ways you can display columns. And once again, these are choices. You got to think about how your students perceive their grades. Some people feel that students are very receptive with the letter grades. Some people feel students are more receptive with a 100% scale. Also, some people think, you know, the math is there. It's fine with the total points. All whatever you think is good for your class and your students. The key thing is to be consistent. Don't flip-flop between points and 100%, and make sure that everything is calculating in these overall grade columns, however you want to label them. Okay. The next part I want to show you is a couple cool things. So we kind of touched on column organization. And frankly, in my position, this is like my best friend in the Grade Center. It really is. Column organization will show you, once again, it's that good, nice list of everything that you're doing in your Grade Center. It shows you all the points. If you're like, why is something averaging super weird? Well, I'm averaging a 10 and a bunch of hundreds. That's going to bring the average down, things like that. Okay, well, you know, what am I missing from my classwork category? Oh, here, this right here. It shows you all the categories. It shows you all the points. You can move your items around, so you can move a couple of things around and hit submit. But also, when I see when someone says, oh, something's missing from my Grade Center, it'll show up here. Let me show you. If you're like, I know I had it, I know I had it. If you accidentally hide from instructor view, or let's say it's an assignment you're not using, you've hid it from the students, you want to hide the column because there's a lot of scrolling to do. It's gone. You may forget about it. But if you go to manage and column organization, there it'll be. You'll be able to see it. So you'll be able to see anything that you've hid. So if something goes missing, first thing to do is check column organization. And then if I want to put it back, click it, show. There we go, hit submit, and now we have it back. And like I said, you can also drag and drop and move your columns around, shows those hidden activities. It helps you with math, it helps you with organization, and it helps you when you forget that you hid stuff, okay? Next, I'm gonna show you a really cool tool called the reminder tool. I like to use this after I've done some grading or the day before a due date. What I can do is basically, if there is no submission, you can go here, edit dot, hit send reminder, and it will send students to their RCSJ email address. Hey, buddy, you forgot this. It's due tomorrow, or you're past due on an assignment. And that only works if there's no submission and no zero. So it has to have no data on it. So I can hit some send. And for this case, if I did, let's say assignment 1, everyone on this list except Kyle would get that email because he has a submission. Side note, I know I said put zeros in, but if you put a 0 in, it means that they've received a score, so they won't get a reminder. So what I like to do is after I've graded a whole row of assignments, I will hit send that reminder, and then I'll put my zeros in. Because I do communicate to my students that zeros are, you know, I have a late policy. You can turn a 0 into a better grade if needed. Okay, so the send reminder is a great tool to say, hey, you're missing something. So when we think about retention, that's something to consider. Also, if it's the due date before a big project. Also, discussion boards. It's a good way. I know we always get challenged with getting people to get that initial discussion board, you know, first initial post due on Friday, rest of the posts are due on, Monday or something like that. If you don't have a submission, maybe you can send everyone a reminder that you haven't done anything yet on it. Okay, so those are a couple ways you can use that send reminder tool. And you will also get an email that will say exactly what the students, it is a warning. It does look a little spammy. It's very generic. It just says you're missing it. This is the due date. This is the assignment. But you'll get a copy of it, so you'll see exactly what the students are seeing. Okay, so let's move on to zeros. Like I said, after you grade students' work, remember to add zeros because that's the way it's going to impact those calculations. If no data is there, it's like it doesn't exist. And even if you're using total points, there's no data to it. If it basically says, once that activity is in the playing field, it adds the point to that activity to the possible points. And if you don't have any points towards it, well, that scope gets a little bigger. So it actually shows the difference and impacts your final grade. Now, if you have a student who just emailed you that day, I'm working on it, maybe don't put the zero in it, maybe don't send them the reminder if you know they're working on it, because already if it might look a little automated, it might add extra stress to them. So, and that just comes with good practices of keeping in touch with your students, okay? And like I said, this is a good practice for either total or overall grade schemes. Now, this one is not mathy at all, but it's a lot of fun. Okay, so color coding. You can color code your grade. So you notice how these scores are red, these are 20, and these are green. What we do is manage grading color codes. Make sure this is clicked, enable color codes. And you have a couple options like the background color if something's in progress, needs grading. I tend to just go with the score itself. All right. So I work on 100% scale. So if something's more than a 90% of what it's equal to, it goes in green. Maybe it's average, it goes in yellow. And there are some semesters I will mainly just use this one. If my students have a score that is less than 70%, I put it in red. Now, we know numbers. We can see that, a 70, that's not too good. But that color coding just kind of makes it pop, and realize you just look at the whole grade center without even actually digging into their submissions, and you're like, oh, I need to email the student. All right. So this is just another visual reminder of charting progress for students. So you can color code your grade center as well. So once again, we go to manage grading color codes. Make sure we go down to criteria, and you have different options, less than, between. Maybe you don't want to do 75, maybe you want to do 80. Depends on how you're what scale or what performance level you need your students at. But you can assign them a certain color to sort of pop, and kind of those students that need a little extra help that can jump out. Okay.